Are you willing to pay the price? Matthew chapter 25 verses 1 to 13, The Parable of the 10 Virgins. Adapted from Chicken Soup for the Soul, Living Your Dreams, John McCormack. In Jesus' parable about 10 virgins or 10 bridesmaids, the main issue for them was to remain focused. They needed to remain watchful for the coming of the bridegroom, Jesus. They lost sight of their goal, their focus. When my wife Marianne and I were building our hair salon 13 years ago, a Vietnamese fellow would stop by each day to sell us donuts. He spoke hardly any English, but he was always friendly, and through smiles and sign language, we got to know each other. His name was Lee. During the day Lee worked in a bakery, and at night he and his wife listened to audio tapes to learn English. I later learned that they slept on sacks full of sawdust on the floor in the back room of the bakery. In Vietnam, his family owned almost 1/3 of North Vietnam, including huge holdings in industry and real estate. His father was murdered. Then Lee moved to South Vietnam with his mother, where he went to school and became a lawyer. He prospered. He saw an opportunity to construct buildings to accommodate the ever-expanding American presence in South Vietnam, and soon became one of the most successful builders in the country. He had to return to the north on business, but was captured by the North Vietnamese and put in prison for 3 years. In order to escape, he had to kill 5 soldiers, and then he went back to the south. The South Vietnamese government assumed he was a plant and put him in prison. Lee got out and started a fishing company, eventually becoming the largest canner in South Vietnam. When he learned that the U.S. troops and embassy personnel were about to pull out, he made a life-changing decision. He took all the gold he had saved and loaded it aboard one of his fishing vessels and sailed with his wife out to the American ships in the harbor. He exchanged the gold for safe passage to the Philippines, where he was taken to a refugee camp. Lee approached the president of the Philippines and convinced him to make one of his boats available for fishing, and Lee was back in business. 2 years later, Lee had earned enough money to leave for America, and live with his cousin. On the way to America, Lee became distraught and depressed about having to start over again. His wife tells of how she found him near the railing of the ship, about to jump overboard. She told him, "If you jump, what will become of me? We've been together for so long and through so much. We can do this together." It was the encouragement that Lee needed. They arrived in Houston in 1972. They were flat broke and spoke no English. In Vietnam, family takes care of family, and they found themselves in the back room of his cousin's bakery. Lee's cousin offered both Lee and his wife jobs in the bakery. After taxes, Lee would take home $175 per week, and his wife $125. Their total annual income would be $15,600. Further, the cousin offered to sell them the bakery for $120,000 whenever they could come up with a $30,000 down payment. The cousin would finance the remainder with a note for $90,000. Here is how they focused on becoming bakery owners. They decided to keep their $300 per week by living in the back room of the bakery. They kept clean by taking sponge baths in the mall's restrooms. They ate only old bakery goods. Each year, for 2 years they lived on a total of $600, and saved the $30,000 for the down payment. Lee explained, "If we got ourselves an apartment, we'd have to pay the rent, then buy furniture and have a transportation cost to and from the apartment. We'd buy a car, and that meant we'd have to pay insurance, buy gas, and maintain it. So we knew if we got that apartment we'd never get our $30,000 down payment." After he and his wife had saved the $30,000, and bought the bakery, Lee once again sat down with his wife for a serious chat. They still owed $90,000, it had been a difficult 2 years, they would have to live in the back room for another year to pay off the loan. "I'm proud to tell you that in 1 year, Lee and his wife saved virtually every nickel of profit and paid off the loan. In just 3 years they owned an extremely profitable business, free and clear. Then they rented their first apartment. To this day, they continue to save on a regular basis, live on an extremely small percentage of their income, always pay cash for their purchases. Do you think they are millionaires today? I'm pleased to tell you, they are millionaires many times over. Li and his wife certainly remained focused on their goal. Our 10 virgins didn't. Li and his wife didn't even know English? You do. They were penniless but achieved their goal by sacrificing and hardship. Are you willing to make the hard choices to get into heaven? The day of your judgment might not be as far off as you think. Are you ready for the time you come face to face with the Lord? Are you building up your treasure in heaven? Lord, Lord, open the door for us. But he said in reply, Amen, I say to you, I do not know you. Therefore, stay awake, for you know neither the day nor the hour. As Dad used to say, live each day as if it were your last, and one day, you don't know when, you will be right.